Bill?
Hello. Why did you pick that particular environmental group to associate this tour with?
There's no reason why it was that particular group. It could have been a number of groups. The reason is the issue. It could have been Greenpeace. It could have been Friends of the Earth. They were there at the right time. It's just a question of timing. You know, I saw them on a TV program in England talking about, I think it was the Exxon oil spill, something like that. But they seem to have the facts, and they seem to be a sensible group. So I talked to them, and they were sensible. Basically, the only reason I'm interested in the environmental issue is I'm a father of 4 children, and like most people, probably everyone in this room, this year, when we found out that there was a hole in the ozone layer that was dangerous, I think it pointed up the environmental thing, you know, and the fact that we really have got to start cleaning up, or we're going to fry. Even the people, Exxon, have got children, and their children are going to want to swim in lakes and rivers. So it just seemed like a good time for everyone to start addressing the issue. So I'm really just helping, giving them publicity. I don't know an awful lot of facts about it. You know, if you ask me about specific issues, I'm not. I'm just a man in the street kind of thing, as far as that's concerned, like a concerned parent. And I think normally at these press conferences I ask for anybody who doesn't want the world cleaned up and want an unpolluted world, could they put their hand up? And of course no hands ever go up, you know, because we all agree that it's time to start sorting this problem out. So I'm just hopeful that by giving a little bit of publicity to these people on this tour, which reaches a lot of people through the TV and the radio and the shows, that it'll just turn the whole thing around. Because I think people are going to do it anyway, with or without me. But I'm just adding my little bit of weight to the campaign, and hope that, you know, towards the 90s and into the next century, that we will seriously start to live on a clean planet. Because as far as I'm concerned, it probably is the only one in the universe that will support our life the way we want it. It's certainly the only one with rivers and trees and stuff. I mean, we've been everywhere else. We've been the moon, Mars, and there's dust, you know. So it seems like this is worth keeping, you know. So that's the reason.
Well, Paul, could you tell us about your movie that you were filming in Toronto on Thursday? And I understand you're filming here tonight again.
Yeah, we're filming Richard Lester, who made the original Beatles films, Hard Day's Night in Hell, and a number of other films since, is doing a feature film which features the concert and various other things. I think there's some inclusion of the Friends of the Earth issue and that sort of thing. But that's basically what it's for. A film out, I think, maybe within the next year, which will centre... No, it centres on all the concerts we're doing. And he's taking some stuff in Toronto, some stuff in Japan, to get the kind of global aspect of the tour.
Paul, it's become clear in the last couple of years there's a lot of stuff in the EMI vaults from the Beatles days that hasn't been released, either alternate versions of some of the songs you did or songs you did for other people. Would you like to see some of that come out legitimately now that you've extended your royalties from?
Yeah, some of it is going to come out. Some of it's good, some of it's bad. You know, like any of these kind of old rehashes. It's like Jim Reeves and Buddy Holly, you know, after they died, suddenly you'd see these kind of not very good records coming out with, like, Buddy. They put the Fireballs on one of the records to be remembered, you know. They weren't very good records. But there are some things. There's some tapes from the BBC in London that we did, which are kind of terrific. You know, they were never our favourite tracks, I must get that out straight. You know, but the fact is, because the Beatles was what the Beatles was, and because it's a long time now, I think they have a certain interest. My favourite is John singing Leave My Kitten Alone. Okay? Who just got bleeped. Yeah.
Back in '87, you told Rolling Stone magazine that the 2 reasons to go on tour would be first to have good enough material on a new album to go on tour, and then to have a band with you.
Yeah.
This time around, I understand you're playing half of Flowers in the Dirt. You're playing not that many songs from 70 to 86. Is there any reason for it?
No, not really. It's just the selection that we've done. I originally sat down when we were planning this tour and just thought, if I was going to this show, what would I like to see them play? And I wrote down a list of about 35 songs, which included stuff from the Beatles days through to now. to the new album. And then we goofed around with this stuff in rehearsal and found that certain ones worked better than others live. Things like Sgt. Pepper, because they've got lines in it about "you're such a lovely audience, we love," you know. And I'd never sung that to an audience, because the only time I ever did that song was when we recorded it. The day we recorded it, and then you kind of put it in the vaults and they released it. And the Beatles weren't touring then, so we never did that song. So some of those had to be in the set, really. And it's long enough now, since the breakup of the Beatles, for me not to really feel the pain of it. It's like an old divorce. You know, after a long time, you don't sort of hate the whole affair like when you're right on top of it. All of us refused to do Beatle material for quite a few years after the breakup. Really, in order to just kind of concentrate on our new careers and kind of get ourselves established as life after the Beatles, you know. So now I think we've ended up with 16 Beatles songs, 15 non-Beatles songs in the set. So it's a pretty good mix. But as you say, there aren't that many songs from the sort of Wings period. There are reasons. I mean, for instance, My Love Kintyre would have been a good record to do maybe in Canada because it's sold well here, and you've got a lot of Scottish people over here. And French like bagpipes too. But I mean, so I hear anyway. But in America, that wouldn't have made as much sense. So you've got to try and work it out so you get a set that will satisfy most people. I think we've got a pretty good balance.
Paul, can
Yes.
you say what stimulates your inspiration to work?
My inspiration mainly just comes from fiddling around with music. I nearly always get the melody first. It's not often that my inspiration is a lyrical one. Something like Eleanor Rigby, I would have just written a da-da-da-da, and then the words start to come. That's mainly how I work. So these days, it's still the same. Sitting down with an instrument, and then if you find a nice musical phrase comes out, that's how I do it. But lyrically, it might be things within my own life, like my family. These days, I've got a song on the new album called Put It There, which is based on something my dad used to say to us as kids. Just put it there if it weighs a ton. Just those old silly jokes, you know. And I found myself telling my own son, put it there. Whereas that's your grandfather used to say that, you know, kind of thing you do with kids. And it just struck me as being a good title, Put It There. So I made that into a song. But it's not, and We Got Married on the new album is about, largely about my life. Anyway. But it can be anything, it really can be anything. It can just be something I hear on TV or, you know, it's not necessarily, I also have another set of songs which are just made up and they're not about me. Although a psychiatrist would probably disagree. Yeah.
After so many years, after so many songs, how would you describe your musical evolution? Do you address the song the same way you did 25 years ago?
No, you can't address it the same way because I was 25 years younger then. You know, I was just a kid fresh out of Liverpool. Everything was a novelty. Plus I was a bachelor, which changes things, you know. I still enjoy it as much, but obviously the novelty can't remain 20 years later because you've been doing it for 20 years. You know, it's impossible to keep it that fresh. I still love doing it as much. If I have a day off, that's when I write. You know, I'm supposed to be resting, so writing for me is resting. I've got a real interesting project on at the moment with this composer called Carl Davis who conducts and writes for orchestras. And we're doing a thing for the Liverpool Cathedral, which is to be in 1991, where it's a piece which is like about an hour or so long for the orchestra and for the choir. So that's very different from anything I've ever written. I don't know. Got to finish it first. We're halfway through. It's very interesting for me because normally the way I write is intro, verse, chorus, verse, middle eight, chorus, good night. You know, it's the way everyone writes. You know, but with writing this other type of music, where quote serious, kind of like classical music for an orchestra, you never have to go back to anything. So it's very interesting. Or you come back in the fourth movement to a theme you had then. So it's a stretch, as the Americans say, for me.
The Hofner bass is back with you on this
Yeah.
tour. I'd like to know what attracted you to that instrument, first of all, and second of all, is that the original?
This is one of the originals. I had a couple, and there was one stolen. But this one here, it's got the actual, you can see a little bit of plastic up at the top of it, on the side. That's the actual gig list from Candlestick Park, I think. So it's just a little piece of paper. It starts off rock and roll music, Babies in Black, I Feel Fine, I'm Down. And finishes with Yesterday spelt wrong. But, so yeah, what originally attracted me to that bass was being left-handed. I would always play other basses, and because of the cutaway and because of the arrangement of all the pickups and all the knobs, I always looked stupid. And anyone could go, duh, you can't play it. It looked like, because I had to turn it upside down and restring it. And the good thing about this was it looked kind of symmetrical. You know, the violin shapes are symmetrical, so even if you turn it upside down, it doesn't look that mad. And plus, I didn't have a lot of money. I was working in Hamburg, and it cost about 30 quid, 30 pounds. I'd hate to tell you what it costs now.
Paul, how do you feel about the way?
It's gone up a bit.
How do you feel about the way Tears for Fears has borrowed the Beatles sound for Sowing the Seeds of Love? Do you have any views on that?
Yeah, I think it's quite nice, really. I mean, when I first heard it, it was a bit of a shock. It was like, oh, who are they kidding? You know? But I see it as a tribute. You know, they could have been doing a Doors takeoff, could have been doing a Rolling Stones takeoff, you know, and stolen that style. But they're quite honest about it. You know, they're quite open that it is a tribute to the Beatles, and it's purposely that kind of '67 Sgt. Pepper style. It's quite funny, you know. It's a tribute. You know, I'm honoured. This is two contemporary guys. One of them's being John, the other one's being me. So I mean, I'm going to put in for a royalty.
Do you have the album?
I haven't got the album yet. No, I've seen the single everywhere though.
Paul?
Yes, ma'am.
I don't even know if this is a question. Earlier
It
this
probably is.
It probably is, maybe. I just want your comment on something to sort of get some insight into you. Earlier this week here in Montreal, there was this really horrible tragedy.
Yeah.
You heard about it. A lot of the people that were affected by that are people who are your fans, and many will be here tonight and many won't. How do you feel about that, and are you going to make any mention tonight or maybe?
Well, I mean, I was really waiting until now to see who was going to mention what, you know. My first reaction was to mention it, but something like that is just so shocking. There's not an awful lot you can say, you know. Coming so near to the anniversary of John's death too, it's weird. I was as shocked, I think, as everyone in the world. You know, we were in Toronto when I saw it on the news. I really don't know what to say. I think I'm like everyone else. What can you say? There's some guy. I mean, you can say, maybe it argues for gun control, which I would say. Not everyone agrees with that. I think it should be harder for people to get hold of guns like it is in England. Over here, you can buy them in magazines and stuff, but that's your tradition. Unfortunately, like America, it's written into your American Constitution. I'm not sure if it's in yours, but the right to bear arms is in the American Constitution. It's a very difficult problem. Personally, I would say it argues very strongly for gun control, but you're going to get the National Rifleman Association kind of differ with me on that. But you know, it was just one of those terrible, mad, shocking things that happens in our society today. I don't know how you stop it.
Would you dedicate Let It Be, perhaps, or a song with...
If you think it'd help, I'll do anything, you know, but I don't know if it'll just reawaken memories. I mean, I'll do it. You know, if you think it's the right thing to do, I'm got to ask you people. You know, it's not my town, it's not my tragedy.
You can just make a mention of it.
Okay, I will in that case.
The fact it was 14 women, we had a guy here with women, and it's a shock to see that so many young girls and women.
I must say, it did occur to me the day after when I was thinking about it, because you know, it's the kind of thing you can't get out of your mind. These major tragedies. I did think, I wonder if any of those kids had a ticket to the show. But anyway, look, you know, it's just tragic, and all I could say is for the parents and stuff, you know, I'm just devastated, and there's nothing more I can say about it, really.
Paul?
Yeah.
Paul, in the space of about 6 days, music fans here are being treated to your concert and Rolling Stones. I'm wondering if you can flash back over your career. Was there ever a time when either yourself and the Stones or Beatles and Stones collaborated in the studio? I know that they once did I Want to Be Your Man.
No,
But did you ever come close? Was that ever...
we never actually collaborated on anything. No. We were good friends in the 60s. It was a nice loose scene. It was like a little sort of cafe, Greenwich Village type scene, you know, in London then. It was very loose. All those kids coming out of the suburbs trying to make our fortune with this rock and roll business. So we were all good mates. And how Wanna Hold Your Hand came about was Mick and Keith were in a taxi in Charing Cross Road in London. And John and I were looking at the guitar shops, which are also in Charing Cross Road. And we saw them, we said, hey, hey, stopped the taxi, jumped into the taxi with them, and got chatting. And I think George had just managed to get them their record contract. He talked to the man at the record company who'd said, do you know of any good bands? George said, yeah, there's this real hot band called the Stones. We'd seen a few nights before. And they were all looking for the new Beatles, right? And this was the record company that had turned us down, so they needed to kind of do something quick, you know. So George Harrison told them about the Stones. And then, consequently, when we were in this taxi, they were now looking for material. And John and I suggested, I want to be your man. Might be good for them, because we knew they were into that kind of thing. They'd done some stuff that was in that kind of bag. That's the closest we ever came to collaborating. We were just good friends through the 60s. Good guys. And the joke used to be that everyone used to think they were dirty, right? Everyone thought they had long hair. If you look at those pictures, they're very clean young boys, very smartly turned out, you know. It's really nothing like long hair is this. What do you mean filthy? He said, well, that Mick Jagger, he said he wore the same T-shirt on stage as he'd been wearing all day. I thought, well, that's filth, you know, that is real filth. What are you going to do?
All songs from the post-Beatle period, do you still really like? You say, boy, I'd do that again, or that's still...
From the post-Beatle period, quite a few of them. Maybe I'm Amazed, Every Night, Band on the Run, My Love, Mulligan Time, We Got Married, Put It There, My Very Face. There's a lot of stuff I like, you know. But I think that the thing, what happens historically, is set against the Beatles stuff. You know, the Beatles stuff always looks better just because it was the Beatles.
Paul,
Doesn't bother me, no. No, I'm part of it all, so I'm quite happy.
All have a deep emotion, visceral feeling when they hear, particularly a lot of the older Beatles songs.
Yeah.
Do you ever get that same feeling? Do you ever
Yeah, I do. Every night. I get it. Every night at the gig, actually. Particularly with the song Can't Buy Me Love. And my theory is, because it comes right in with the hook. There's no sort of dun-dun-dun-dun-dun. It just goes, can't buy me. And you haven't got time to catch your breath. And it's just one of those songs, just takes you right back. It kind of kicks me in the stomach every night. It's good.
Paul, about technology.
Sorry, he hasn't had a question.
Do you wish to challenge other pop stars to make efforts?
Well, I mean, the interesting thing is that the pop stars themselves make the efforts without me telling them. You know, I think we've now got a tradition in music which started to come alive maybe in the 60s. It was going before then. You know, there were plenty of musicians who were good-thinking people. But I think, you know, with Bangladesh in the 60s, trying to relieve that famine problem, with All You Need Is Love, with some of the philosophies mentioned by the Beatles, and then more recently with Live Aid and with Prince's Trust, you know, helping kids get started and stuff. Then with Sting in the Rainforest, Peter Gabriel, there are a lot, and Amnesty International. I think there are a lot of concerned people, and I think it's great that they talk to the kids, and instead of talking about, wow, you know, the toothpaste I use, it's like, what are we going to do for the future? You know, what do you think? I think the audience is perhaps more thinking audience now. It's all a little bit more political than it was. Certainly Live Aid was a major political event.
Wondering why you haven't played here in 25 years.
I'm wondering that too.
Why didn't Wings play here?
I don't actually know. You know, I get this. They say, why didn't you play San Diego? Why aren't you playing Philadelphia? It's normally a question for the promoters. It's to do with availability of halls, often. On this tour, we've missed quite a few cities out that I would have liked to have done. I mean, we're not playing Texas, which I would have liked to have done. You know, I got a lot of fans in Texas. But it's something to do with the availabilities of the hall. You know, you've got to book these places like a year ahead. I don't get into that side of it, in truth. I like to play everywhere, including Moscow.
Paul, I was reading this morning in the newspaper in Toronto, and they were saying Paul McCartney, with the death of Leonard Bernstein, is now the greatest living songwriter.
You mustn't believe what you read in the papers. It's not a heavy burden. It'd be heavy if it was the other way around. It's very, very pleasant, you know. I mean, I don't believe it, but it's very pleasant to be told that. It's a compliment, you know.
Always?
What does your, I mean, how does your health support touring?
How do I, health?
Yeah.
How do I do? I don't know really. I'm a vegetarian, so this might have something to do with it. I've been a vegetarian for 20 years, and the whole family's been that way for 20 years, so I don't know. Plus, we committed to this whole touring thing about a year ago, so I've been kind of getting in some kind of training. I've been singing quite regularly.
Why do you want everybody in your group to be vegetarian?
Well, I don't necessarily want them to be vegetarian, but the thing is, on a tour like this, someone like me pays for the food, and I can't buy meat. Sorry, guys. I'm on the side of the little animals have to die, you know. I mean, like, they're all very strapping people. So a couple of the guys on the tour, we did get a couple of complaints very early on, because you know you've got big guys here, riggers, and truck drivers, and that. You know, there were actually only 1 or 2 complaints. But you know, they figure they need their meat, you know, people, the steroids and all this. But I pointed out to them, I said, you know, gorillas, male gorillas eat little leaves, you know. And I said, I'll match one of them against any of our riggers any day, you know. So, you know, think about it.
Yes, ladies' question.
Have you? Oh, great.
We want to go then.
Brilliant, okay, just a couple.
Sorry for my English.
Okay, but
My question is how one can become your friend? Get a little help from you. You told that you would like to play everywhere, and now you have a lot of friends. It's natural in Czechoslovakia, and there are a lot of now students started democratic movement there, and they love you, and I'm sure they would like to see you there one day. How do you see it?
well, I'd like to do that, you know. I'd also like to play Russia and stuff for the reason you say. There are a lot, I get a lot of letters from people behind what used to be the Iron Curtain, which now seems to be lifting fairly swiftly. I'm excited about that whole idea of the wall coming down and playing to those people. Looks like it's going to be easier than it used to be now. It'd be very good to do. I'd like to do it. We're hoping to maybe do that kind of thing next year. Yeah. I'd like to. Yeah, I think it's probably got to be the last question. Yeah?
Okay. One of the charms of the Beatles was that they were funny, they were fooling around a lot, and somehow after they broke up, there was a lot of grief, and then John died, and, you know, and it seems like at the end of the 80s, you know, like George did when he was bad, it's easier to look back on it and laugh about it a little bit. Is that your case?
Yeah, I think that's true. I think at the time the Beatles broke up, it was a more difficult time in my life, certainly, you know. Why we broke up was because it was the business thing. We were actually trying to just hold on to the money we'd made up till that point. And there was someone trying to take it off us. So it was a battle, you know, which we won in the end, but it was a long, painful battle, and it broke the Beatles up in the process. So obviously everyone would be a little depressed, but time is a great healer, you know. This is why I can do the Beatles songs happily now. It's just time. There's enough time gone by for everyone to kind of forget that and just try and remember like the good times. And there were plenty of those.
Paul, with that in mind, what is your personal relationship now with George Harrison?
Very good. It's very good. I haven't actually seen him for a while because I've been on tour. Ringo's been out on tour, and I'm not sure where George has been. He gets about a bit. But
do you ever like get together at you know, at Christmas or something? And
yeah, I hope to this Christmas. Yeah, but yeah, the business thing has been in the way for about 20 years. But as you know, we've just solved that this year, and it's just finalised. So I'm hoping, you know, we'll get together now and get our families together. That's nice. Because they've all got kids, you know. We'll get the kids together. So it looks like it's going to happen. Happy Christmas. Bon Noël. Merci. Okay. See ya. Take it easy. That's how I get on my pants. I'm going to show you. Well, you're going to play with Where is it? No. Unfortunately. You haven't heard that.